you so much, Brennan. Appreciate the opportunity here, and want to say thank you to the audience that's here in this beautiful space here at the League Institute in Greenville, South Carolina. I want to also welcome our audience who's joining us live from Facebook. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Again, my name's Chris from culturereading.com. My wife and I started an online endeavor where we're seeking to do exactly what I think Jonas and Christina are doing, which is, as Christians, engaging culture and being able to engage it with a mind to transform it and to look for ways in which we as Christians can redeem culture. And so, anyway, I'd love for you guys to join us on culturereading.com as well. We have a sign-up sheet in the back there if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter. I want to say beautiful performance tonight. Thank you so much for that. It was amazing, wasn't it? Right? I have to say, I've never seen a beatbox group, so that was pretty amazing. That was the first for me. So I appreciate that, and thanks for the opportunity to kind of talk about Christ and culture and the mission work that you guys are doing. So I know lots of folks here and myself are kind of familiar with kind of what you guys are up to these days, but we'd love to give others who might not know, and maybe some of those who are joining us online, give us an understanding of kind of where you guys, kind of a quick overview of where you guys are and what you're up
to. All right, so to tell our story in short form, Jonas and I were married in 2008, and in the fall of 2009 he joined the United States military as a bandsman, so playing flute and running audio for the U.S. Army bands. We were first stationed in Virginia, and then the Army sent us to Japan in 2012, right? November of 2012. And we were excited about that because I already had a love and appreciation for Japanese culture. I had studied Japanese language in undergraduate and graduate studies. I had done a one semester study abroad there. So I was excited to return and get to share Japan with my husband and our small daughter. And Jonas thought that it would be a cool, fun chance to see another culture for a short, limited period of time, and then we would go back home where we belong. So that was kind of where we were when the Army sent us there. But Jonas's best friend from college, Josh, had grown up in Japan as a missionary kid, but his experience wasn't all that great. And so he was it kind of made him jaded against missions, which is really sad, and they had talked about that a lot. So when we got the news that we were being sent to Japan, he called Josh and said, "Josh, what am I taking my family into? I know there are not many churches. Do you still know anybody that's there? What is it like?" Josh said, "Well, you're not going to believe this, but you're going to have to call me back in 2 weeks because I'm getting on a plane to Tokyo tomorrow to go work with these missionaries in the city." And Jonas is going, "What? You're going to work with missionaries? This has got to be something really different. I don't know what's going on here." But Josh is married to our friend Kristen, who had done her graduate work at Juilliard, and the Juilliard Christian Fellowship sends a missions team pretty frequently to Tokyo in the summers to work with Roger and Abby Lowther of Community Arts Tokyo. So Josh went and he met Roger and Abby, and he came back and he said, "Man, I did not know missions could be like this. It is amazing what they're doing, and you have to meet them." So as soon as we got back, we went to Grace City Church in the center of Tokyo, and we met Roger and Abby, and we said, "Hey, put us to work. We'd like to use this time as much as possible like a taxpayer-funded missions trip. And so anything we can do to support the church, please let us help." And boy, did they take that to heart, and they put us to work, and it was amazing just that we saw God using our skills to build up and nurture the church and to encourage Christians and to enable reaching out to those that had never heard the gospel and building relationships with them as well. So it was really a life-changing experience for us, and about halfway through our time in Japan, Jonas came to me and he said, "I think we're supposed to be here forever." And I said, "Okay." And it was really that short and easy of a conversation. I knew that if the Lord had changed his heart to make him want to do cross-cultural missions in Japan, I was not going to question that call because I knew it came from the Lord. It didn't come from me, it didn't come from anyone else. It came from God giving him a heart for the Japanese people. And so we finished Jonas's military contract and came back to the US in the spring of 2016. And we joined Mission to the World, which will be our sending missions organization that fall, at the same time that Jonas started at seminary at Reformed Theological Seminary in Charlotte. So we were living here, he was commuting up there for seminary, we were joining MTW, we were having our third kid. It was a very big year, 2016. But anyway, I promised you the short version, and I feel like this is the long version.
No, it's great.
Sorry.
It's good information.
So anyway, we have been with MTW for the last couple of years, but only just started full-time raising our support in August when Jonas graduated from seminary. So he now has his master's in biblical studies, and we are trying to build our support network so that we can get back to Tokyo and continue to serve with that same team of missionaries that we were with on the field.
I just want to add that we have to say thank you to all of you for paying taxes because the taxpayers sent us to Japan for 4 years and then the taxpayers paid for seminary. So we're really grateful. And I think it's total proof that God can do anything if he can use the IRS.
Amen. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys sharing that story. That's amazing. It's amazing to see how God works in usually the ways you least expect, right? Usually the ways that you're not looking forward to or not looking at. So regarding tonight's performance, you guys used several selections from Calvin Searveld. Am I saying that correctly? In the program, can you tell us a little bit about why that you connected that with that work?
So Calvin Searveld is he's still living. He's a Dutch Reformed theologian and philosopher up in Canada, and he writes a lot about the arts and the reasons that the arts are important for Christians. And I mean, he even makes like moral arguments about why we need to be concerned with aesthetics and beauty. And I guess over the past 6 months or year, I've really latched onto a lot of his writings. And one of the neat things is that he does all these translations of Psalms that I've found to be very poetic and moving to me personally. And so his books are really dense, like they're philosophical type books. And so I kind of wanted to see if we could package some of his content and the things that he was saying into artistic performance. Because I think he has a lot to say about how artists can engage and beautify. One of my favorite things that he talks about is that God didn't have to make rainbows. He could have just given the Noahic covenant, after the flood and everything, he promised to never destroy the earth by water. And he could have just written that on stone tablets and given it to us like he gave the Ten Commandments. But he chose to take the rainbow and make that a sign. And so one of the things that Searveld pursues that I've really latched onto is that artists get to be rainbow makers for the new covenant, so that we get to continue giving signs and showing work that tastes and smells and evokes, I guess as Tolkien says, the good tilled earth of new creation into this old creation world. And so we get to make things that just reek of the newness of Christ, even to people who are living here in old creation.
I love that. it really hits on something that I think we're passionate about as well with what we're doing with Culture Redeemed, and it gets to that question of why is it important, for Christians to be involved in the arts, let alone getting into cross-cultural missions work and using arts for that, but why Christians in the arts at all?
So we've kind of long, in the Western tradition, we've long held this idea that all truth is God's truth, right? And we hold on to that, the truth of Scripture, the truth of God's Word. The same is true of beauty, that all beauty is God's beauty. Psalm 19, I think we read some of tonight, but just, all of creation is pouring forth speech day after day after night. And Romans 8 talks about all creation is longing for the revealing of the sons of God, for the revealing of redemption. And so creation itself is crying out for these things. And so there's a responsibility on Christians to continue that outcry, I think. And that comes from, Genesis 1, what we what theologians have called the cultural mandate. Go forth, make babies, and fill the earth, and make it a place of beauty and flourishing, is essentially what the cultural mandate commanded is, a place of beauty and provision. Basically, take what God made in the garden and go make the rest of the world like that. And Jesus reiterates that in the Great Commission, when he says, Go, make disciples, and fill the earth with them, and continue to teach them to obey all that I've taught you, which goes back to, who gave the original speech in Genesis 1? Well, if you believe that Jesus is God, then Jesus said that. And so why is it important that Christians be involved in the art? We're commanded to, from Genesis.
Yeah, I feel like we're all telling God's story, regardless of whether or not people that don't believe in God, right? They're creating art, they're telling the story of His beauty and His creation.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Even people who don't believe, it's coming forth. We talk about it all the time. It's coming out of Japanese art forms, like kintsugi, just the beauty of brokenness and the beauty of redeemed brokenness is coming out in Japanese forms. And so even in a culture that has historically never been very receptive to the gospel, its creation itself continues to cry out, even in these art forms that they'll make.
Yeah, so that brings up the next part then. So what do you think makes or should make Christian art different or set apart from secular art?
Yeah, thanks for making this easy.
Yeah, volumes have been written on that question, so I don't know how long. Just sum it up. We were all created to worship something, and we are all worshiping. Everything that we're doing, we are worshiping something. And we're all created to create. And so I think that we do create things, whether intentionally or not. But the big difference, I think, between Christians making art and non-Christians making art, there's a big difference in intentionality and in recognition. So we have this kind of baseline of truth that we want to use everything that we're using. We want everything that we're making to speak that truth and to not deviate from it and to not obscure it. We want that to be able to shine through. I think that's a big part of it. We want the glory of God to show clearly through what we make and not obscure it. And I think that's a big difference that you can see in the art of unbelievers, that obscuring versus clarity of letting God's light come through.
There's another Dutch Reformed theologian. I like dusty books. Named Cornelius Van Til, and one of the things that Van Til talked about is that Christians are the only people who have the right basis for believing anything. And I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole argument, but the same is true for the arts. Christian artists, or artist Christians, if you want to put the noun and the adjective in the right place, are the only ones who actually have the right foundation for taking little pieces of creation and making new things out of them. Now, that doesn't mean that artist Christians somehow are making better work. It just means that foundationally, philosophically, they're the only ones who have the right basis for that. I mean, like, we're the only ones who have the scriptures that tell us all creation is crying out. And so, okay, that has something to tell me about what I can make and how I can make it. I have to obey the ninth commandment. I can't make creation lie. So that has something to do with what I can make as an artist. So when non-believing artists make something, they are making that using borrowed capital. Tim Keller talks about it as a kind of schizophrenia. That like when you listen to good music, there's a schizophrenia that's happening because your mind requires that it be meaningful. Even if you're trying to tell yourself that it's not meaningful, like your heart says, no, this is meaningful when you listen to Bach or something like. And so I think there's a foundational aspect to Christians making art where philosophically, at least, we are the only people in the right place. Now, artistically, we could be in the wrong places, and that's a different conversation, but I think, sorry, it took me a while to get there. But.
No, I think that's exactly, I mean, as you're talking through that, my head is going to all throughout Scripture, right? It's a constant call to, it's about the heart. Right? This is about the heart. This is not about actions or God's after our hearts. And I was thinking over talking to my children recently about the difference between Cain and Abel's sacrifices, right? It's about the heart, right? And I think that's what you were saying here. It's Christians are, with the right perspective, are making that art with the heart in the right spot. So I appreciate that. Specifically, what is the connection for you guys between the arts and church planting or missions work? It's not typically what you would think of with a traditional missions work, so could you explain that a bit?
Sure. We've got all night, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we like to talk about the arts being connected to church planting, at least in Japan, in a few different ways. One of those is that just being practical, aesthetics and beauty are almost like akin to a love language for the Japanese, and so there's a way to just connect across cultures there. Additionally, like artists tend to make community happen very quickly and deeply in interesting ways, and again from Keller, but he talks about artists being like their own people group, like acting like an ethnic group almost. And so you get a group of artists together, it doesn't matter if they're from Japan and from America and from wherever, they start acting like a unified ethnic group, even across language barriers and everything. And then maybe the last thing is, at least for me, I'll pass it to you, but when I was in the Army, we had these things called force multipliers. And if anybody has a better metaphor for this, tell me. A force multiplier is one kind of unit that enables the work of all the other kinds of units. So an accountant is a force multiplier because they make sure that everybody gets paid. and that in turn motivates the soldiers to do their work. A machine gun is a force multiplier. Let's say you have a fire team of like 5 soldiers. One machine gunner enables the work of that whole fire team. If you had 5 machine guns, you just have chaos. But one on a fire team multiplies the effectiveness of that whole unit. And so the arts, I think, related to church planting are a force multiplier. They enable we think about missions in kind of 3 areas. There's new converts, new believers, new communities, and nurtured churches. And the arts are a factor in all of those, and a multiplying factor. And so, as we've seen in Japan, the arts are bringing people in and building them up and sending them out. And so we're really excited about the way that the arts are impacting missions in Japan. Our little team of artists was getting pulled in so many directions by so many church planting teams that they said, okay, we're going to make this a designated team of artists so that they can serve all of these different church planting teams. So we're grateful for the vision there and excited to see God using that.
Yeah, so that last one that he mentioned, nurturing the church, the arts are really, really vital to that, especially in Japan. Japan is an unreached country. The Japanese are the 2nd largest unreached people group in the world. So that means the gospel really has not penetrated. So that means that a lot of Christians in Japan are very lonely. They feel very isolated. Many Japanese believers may be the first person in their family to come to Christ, first person in their workplace, their school, all of their social circles. They may only know Christians at their church and nobody outside of that. So that can lead to a lot of loneliness. While Japan has freedom of religion, you're allowed to practice any religion you want. You don't have to be afraid of being thrown in jail. There are often very difficult social repercussions of becoming a Christian. Some people are disowned by their families, thrown out, divorced, what have you. It can cause a lot of really painful situations. And the arts are a vital way to nurture the small churches in Japan and to nurture the groups of believers that are there. I mean, if you can think about what the arts may have meant to you and how they may have encouraged you in your faith walk at different points in your life. Imagine just not having any resources in your own language. I mean, no music written in your own language, only stuff that is written in other languages and maybe has been translated into your language. No poetry, no devotional books, nothing that you can go to in your own faith walk with the Lord. That's kind of where the Japanese are. We're only at the very beginning of seeing these resources developed. So that's one of the reasons that God gave us a heart to go and serve there, is to help enable the work of Japanese Christians to write and record and produce their own worship music, to encourage believers in their faith, to increase unity between churches and sharing of resources. There are so many great things about having that body of work that that displays the transformation that's taken place in their own hearts from their own cultural perspective.
Amazing. So it's super exciting, the work that you guys are doing and involved in. So tell us here and those online that are joining, how do we get involved? What's a way that people can get involved and help you guys out?
Sure. So our organization in missions is called Mission to the World. So we are in a stage where, since I finished seminary, now we're raising funds to get back to Japan. We are just over 2/3 of the way there, which we're excited about. So God willing, we'll be back in Japan, maybe even as early as August. So if you're tired of seeing us, give us your money, we'll leave. So the big thing is prayer. We've seen a lot of spiritual warfare in a lot of just blatantly putting it in like scary ways. So we're on our knees a lot, and we cherish the people who are also on their knees with us. And then secondarily, we do have the finances, so we're especially looking for people to help fund us monthly or at some regular interval. And then thirdly, we're looking for people who we can steal and take back to Japan with us. So, and culture makers and folks who just have a heart. It is the second largest unreached people group, and it's an incredibly long vision mission field. And so we're looking for people to come and spend time, spend their lives. I don't think there's any better way to maybe spend your life than being poured out. And so we're grateful for that and excited for that. So I should mention, the websites are for like our missions stuff is mtw.org, and then you can search for our name, Davison, and you'll find us there. We also have our Japanese nonprofit is Community Arts Tokyo, and so that's communityarts.jp. So more information on events and everything there in English and in Japanese, depending on your preference. Yeah, I don't know anything you want to. Oh yeah, we have a family. Well, theoretically, we have a family blog that we send out, and it's davisonfamily.tokyo. So, and then, and for those of you that are here, we have an email sign up, so we'll spam you and let you know what's going on in Tokyo all the time. We usually send out emails monthly-ish, and we have our what do we call it? Albums. We also recorded an album in addition to what we've recorded here tonight. And so if you do sign up on the email, we will send you out a link to download the recording from tonight. And then there's recordings for sale that we did prior to being here, I guess, in a studio environment as well on the table. So
Thank you guys so much for the performance tonight and for the ways in which you have shared your talents with us, but then you're sharing your talents with the mission field. I'll open up real quick here. Are there any questions from the audience here that you would like to ask? All right. Again, thank you guys so much for the work that you have done, and we'll definitely be praying for you guys. Thanks to the audience that's here and to the audience that joined us via Facebook as well. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks to Brennan and the Leaf Institute for hosting us here tonight, and good night.